Hi, this is Karin Zissis of ASCOA Online. Oh, artificial intelligence. Love it or hate it, you've probably been hearing a lot about it lately. And while its possibilities are exciting for many, it's making a lot of people anxious. In the Americas, most people think it will do more harm than help over the course of the next 20 years. But that sentiment is nothing new. Remember Blade Runner?
3 male, 3 female. They slaughtered 20.
A Blade Runner's job is to hunt down replicants. Manufactured humans you can't tell from the real thing. What I didn't know was they were looking for me.
And the fears aren't unfounded. Thanks to the automation that comes with AI, your colleague or even you could see a job disappear. In May, AI contributed to nearly 4,000 layoffs in the United States. In Latin America, AI is also becoming a part of life. In 2022, 45% of businesses in the region were already using it, up from 35% in 2021. And when it comes to generative AI, the tools that can produce writing, music, and answer our questions, Latin Americans are testing the waters. By April of this year, more than 300 million of ChatGPT's users were from Latin American countries, making up about 10% of the site's total visitors.
The biggest risk I see is of the increased inequalities that we are already seeing in the region, manifested by access to internet, to connectivity, but also to the skills to make use of the new technologies.
That's Ángel Melguizo. He's a partner of Arguia, a green technology and economics consulting firm. And he's also an UNESCO advisor on AI and ethics for Latin America.
It's not first connect Latin America and then invest in AI. We have to do it now, both of them.
Melguizo spoke with my colleague Luisa Leme about how Latin America, a region already behind on access to technology, needs to focus on inclusion to adapt to the digital revolution. He also explained what AI can do for productivity in Latin American countries. Can you imagine if we could cut traffic time in half in Sao Paulo or Bogotá?
Efficiency in the public sector is one of the huge potentials that AI has.
Before we start, I want to let you know that Latin American Focus is taking a break for the summer. We'll be back in September with election coverage and more. For now, you can catch up on episodes you've missed on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you.
You're listening to Latin America in Focus.
Latinoamérica en Foco.
América Latina em Foco.
A podcast by America Society, Council of the Americas on politics, economics, and culture in the region.
Ángel, thank you so much for coming back to Latin American Focus. It's a pleasure to have you again on the show. You are currently working with UNESCO as an advisor, and you've been leading efforts on digital transitions. But I had to ask you, because the last time we had you on the show, we were talking about another huge adaptation for the world's economy, the China Belt Road Initiative. Listeners can go find this episode. We are going to link on the notes. Let me ask you, how did your focus turn into artificial intelligence?
Well, thanks a lot for inviting me again. Life passes, and there are some of us who like action. And I don't see, let's say, more action right now on today than on AI. And in general, I don't see bigger opportunities for Latin America development that getting deeper into digital transformation, being proactive in digital transformation, and diversifying partners. I mean, we spoke on the Chinese potential. China is investing heavily in Latin America in technology and telecommunications. China is, along with the US, leading the AI race. So I feel that that life passes, but I'm still sitting, let's say, at the center of the storm and the opportunity at the same time, which is what I like. So thanks a lot. And I see the council also addressing this issue. So we are in this together.
That's great. There's a lot of discussion about how artificial intelligence could disrupt the world's economy and people's everyday lives. Since Chat GPT was open to public use in November 22, and it reached 100 million users in January this year. AI became part of everyone's conversations. We hear about jobs disappearing and fears of automation. Current generative AI and other technologies have the potential to automate work activities that absorb 60 to 70% of employees' times today. This is according to a recent McKinsey report. How do you see AI affecting jobs in Latin America?
Yeah, well, it's a disruption, but the disruptions can be for good or really for bad, depending on what we do with them. And so AI is an opportunity, and AI is a digital revolution that Latin America cannot miss, as we have missed some of the past. Indeed, it's going to impact, as other key digital revolutions in the past, how we live, how we relate, and also how we work. So focusing on jobs, yeah, for a long time, those specialists in labor economics, one of my previous lives, we stopped talking about jobs and we started to talk about tasks. And we stopped talking about titles and more skills. So AI here demands obviously investing in new skills to adapt to this revolution and take advantage of it. It entails also regulation to make sure that AI really behaves and drives the society and our labor markets where we want them to go. That's why we need productivity. And maybe the distinct fact that AI has versus other digital revolutions as automation, robots, or software is that it is impacting those like us who thought we were untouchable and we were doing something so creative that machines will not arrive there. Well, they are here. ChatGPT and the other large language models are starting to write as well as we do. They are starting to speak, to talk, to compose music, to compose images in a way that obviously we feel challenged, as others have been in the past. So if we have been, as economists or specialists, giving advices to others like relax, but act, train yourself, reskilling, take other advantages, this is what we have to do. Because for me, this is a good idea and a good news that these AI tools are going to be saving 60 or 70% of my time. So again, this is a huge opportunity, and I understand the challenges and I understand even the fear of uncertainty. I feel it myself. My job, our job as economists is going to change dramatically. Your job as communicators is going to change dramatically. But the powerful tools as AI should take us somewhere higher, more productive, and so. The point here is also inclusion, because we are privileged in this region having good connectivity, good skills to deal with this technology. Still, 3 or 4 Latin Americans out of 10 don't have the connectivity or the skills to take advantage of this AI, and they should be also the focus.
Yeah, it's a huge gap. The Latin American countries lag other regions in the world in terms of digital gap, like you said. So what are the risks artificial intelligence represent when talking about this gap? And
Yeah.
also, as you said, this is about inclusion, right? Can AI help include more people in this country's economies?
Absolutely. I mean, the biggest risk I see is of the increased inequalities that we are already seeing in the region, manifested by access to internet, to connectivity, but also to the skills to make use of the new technologies. So for me, the biggest risk is there. Now, oftentimes these models are trained with data that is not inclusive, that all represents more some segments of the population than others. And we have already seen that. AI tools left alone, if they have to pick the next CEO of a company, it's going to be a Caucasian 50 to 60 years old male, despite the fact that we know that skills and the inspiration and creativity is equally distributed. So a risk of data bias is inherent in these kind of models. Another risk is that these algorithms and these models are not understandable even for the guys leading these technologies because they are hyper complex. Again, because they are starting to think, speak, compose music even better than we do. So this explanatory part of algorithms is important because we have to make sure that we know what they are doing, and then when we put some information, what's going to be the result. And let me put you an example. I mean, when a bank official, a bank employee uses an AI algorithm to decide whether I deserve a credit or not, I hope that he knows or she knows what's the functioning inside the tools. And in many respects, in many cases, it is not the case. This is risk number two. I mean, the explanatory part of that. And three, another risk that we are seeing is that many times the teams developing these kind of tools is not diverse enough. And we know that there are some biases that we have as male, female, European, Latin American that we don't know, but they are interacting and they're making us behave as we behave. So just putting diversity in teams is a good idea, not to mention the environment footprint of these large models, which is another of the risks. But again, risks are opportunities, depends how do you react to them. And for me, AI is going to be at the heart of the digital revolution if Latin America really it is proactive.
You're talking about a need for governments to really get around an AI strategy to be able not to widen their own inequalities?
Yeah, and that allows me to get back a bit to your first question. It's not first connect Latin America and then invest in AI. We have to do it now, both of them. No? So first, bridge a gap. The United Nations is pushing for a global digital compact. Governments are struggling and thinking out of the box. Many companies, even big tech, but mostly telcos, are thinking how to arrive to the last mile, the last kilometer. So that's it. But on the other hand, and simultaneously, governments should have their own AI strategies, meaning regulation, but also meaning skills. Skills for those at the government who are dealing with AI, to make sure that they know what they are confronted and know the opportunities, and also skills for the labor force, which is not just the low or middle skilled workers, because this is a technology that is going to be taking part of our tasks, and I hope this is for good.
In Latin America, we also see sub-regional divides. For example, when you see the ranking of countries using ChatGPT, the US ranks one, right? Ranks first in the world. Then Brazil is on 10th place. It's in 10th place. And then countries like the DR, the Dominican Republic, for example, are 50th. What are the sub-regional concerns here for Latin America? Do some countries run the risk of being left behind? And is there a way to close those sub-regional gaps in AI use?
We are seeing countries like Brazil or Chile or Costa Rica or even Colombia who have been thinking about their AI strategies for long, and they even have acts, laws. I mean, where the Europe is thinking what's going to be the regulation, the law in 2024, where Brazil is even a bit advanced in that respect. So yeah, we are seeing some countries very much related to GDP per capita. The richest countries in Latin America are there. So we need, let's say, public goods in the region for the others to move ahead. But even for the, let's say, the lower or the middle income countries in the region, they need an AI strategy. I know this might sound like science fiction, but it's not something that you have to wait until you connect. That's a big message. Let me give you an example. One of the key challenges that many low or middle income countries have in Latin America, it's the low tax revenues that they have, so the low public resources. That makes targeting the public benefits even more important because you cannot make mistakes. If you are Brazil and you have a public sector as big as Europe, well, you may give me a tax benefit that I shouldn't be getting, but still, I'm not getting it out of someone who needs it more. When we see some of the Central American countries, it's clear that they need to have more efficient ways to target their policies. AI is being used, for instance, to identify which segments of the population need the most these public benefits. And it's just not a census that each of the countries do every 10 years, or it's not based on GDP or income service that they do every 5 years if they are lucky. These are instruments that can be used almost with real time. Real time, who is in the most need in the region and who should be getting those things. So the efficiency in the public sector is one of the huge potentials that AI has.
Mhm.
The instruments are there, but obviously we need to invest in the computational and the machines in the government and the skills of the public servants working with them. When I'm speaking about taxes, this is my previous life, taxes and public economics, but it's also education, it's also health.
Mhm.
We can have better and stronger and more targeted and more efficient and more impactful public services if AI is used for good, provided all the conditions that I mentioned. So yeah, the urgency is there.
What would be the main sectors here that represent the opportunities in the region with AI?
Where we should put the accent, let's say the focus in terms of public sector, where we have identified that is more needed. Obviously, health and education are the key cornerstones of a modern and empowered society. So obviously, I would start there. But in the private sector, you have all potentially being benefits. So given that our region is so urbanized, I would use AI to make our cities more livable. I mean, I live in Bogota, which is where traffic is not fluid. If you allow me
It's a hard life in the carretera, I know.
so I would love to see AI foreseeing and making my life and the life of many others who have to devote 3 or 4 hours of their time getting to the work to do it faster. So when you said people are going to be saving or AI might save or might reduce 60 or 70% of the time, maybe that's transportation time, which is useless.
Mhm.
And people can stay more at home with the family or work even longer hours. So AI as a general purpose technology is powerful everywhere we want to put the focus. And in terms of public sector, I would say, health and education are key.
Let's talk about regulation. When it comes to countries' policies, AI regulation, the big examples, United States, we see the country trying to foster innovation. Then you have the EU regulating key functions, such as a judge using AI to rule on a case and being more worried about that. And China trying to showcase stricter laws, but at the same time having a lot more control over people's information. Where does Latin America fit in here? I've read a few articles too talking about how this country's laws about data privacy and internet regulation might be applied to artificial intelligence use. Where does Latin America stand in terms of AI regulation?
Every time somebody connects to a podcast or attends a conference and hears regulation, they starts to check their phone and to do something else. Is okay. This is the less sexy part of the talk. So let me go back just half a step. Microsoft said in their recently released white paper, we have to be sure that AI remains under human control. Microsoft.
Mm-hmm.
The former CEO of Google, in their Age of AI book, he said, along with Kissinger, he said, AI needs context, that is culture, and this is values. So when we speak about regulation, what we speak is about this. I mean, making sure that AI remains under human control. This is not a movie. This is today. And that we make sure that AI reflects the value and the history that we have as societies, as economies, or even as citizens. So this is what we are speaking about when we're speaking about regulation. And let me go just 2 or 3 clear examples of good regulation. No? First, AI tools do not have, let's say, legal responsibility. Again, I'm losing half our podcast listeners. I hope the ones who stay here
But that's
listen
a
to
huge
this.
debate.
This is a huge debate because when you Council of Americas hires or buys an AI empowered tool, you are the responsible, not the tool. So when we are speaking about the AI not having legal responsibility, is that users have legal responsibility. So make sure when you use and you buy from an AI provider that it is good and is not reproducing biases and divides and issues. No. Number two, as I mentioned, algorithm transparency. Some people speak about algos as these black boxes. I don't know what is this machine is doing, but it's doing great. Well, this is not good. We have to be able at least to explain a bit of the rationale. No, and they are not even safe boxes either. So some companies say what I'm doing is so important and so complex that you regulators are not going to understand it. So let me do it, and then maybe if there's a problem, I'll fix it. Imagine if a polluter company says that to the regulator. Okay, I'm polluting a bit your rivers. Well, I'm not sure if I'm polluting, but if I pollute your river, I will fix it afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
In the environment agenda, this is not acceptable anymore. In the digital agenda, regulators cannot accept companies saying, what I'm doing is so complex that you're not going to understand it. So that's why we need regulation.
Mm-hmm.
There are different models, but your question actually responded to itself. Where is Latin America? Where is Latin America? We need a Latin American voice because the challenges and the opportunities that AI has for the region are particularly different. So what I would like is obviously, let's say, that the development banks and the international organizations that are present in the region foster and lead the action so that AI is regulated, let's say, in a Latin American and Caribbean way. Indeed, Brazil is leading the region, very much inspired in the European model of data protection, which personally I think is quite useful, but also get inspiration by the US, in which some states were leading on how to use AI, for instance, in the labor markets or in the public policy. So the good news is that today there's a menu. Now let's start to work on this, because this is not, let's say, a 2030 agenda. This is today. And secondly, we need an international standard and not a Chinese versus European versus US standard, an international standard to set the rules for the developers. And here, United Nations, and in particular UNESCO within United Nations, who I advise, are the ones, let's say, leading a bit these international guidelines that are needed for the developers. So
one of the UNESCO's big recommendations is that countries work with AI to reinforce democracy in a region where we have the rise of misinformation, moving needles in elections across many countries, and that's one of the debates with artificial intelligence. It's misinformation. What are your concerns in terms of risks associated with AI on that topic? Are there opportunities to actually mitigate democratic erosion in the region?
I felt for quite a long time that citizens in Latin America are well beyond their institutions. Many of the citizens and some of the companies are really there already in 2023, 2024 doing AI, while some governments still are functioning with let's say, last century rules. The UNESCO recommendation that was approved by 193 countries, and not the US because it was not part of UNESCO, but the US is coming back to UNESCO precisely because of the work that they are doing of AI. So we can say that this is the world biggest and widest political agreement, said, okay, AI is super powerful, AI for the institutionality, to make sure that institutions around the world catch up with these citizens who are a bit far ahead, is a great tool, but prohibition or is forbidden that AI is used for social scoring. So governments cannot use AI to classify citizens and to let's say to start discriminating them because everybody of us are equal or should be equal in front of the states. And this is a hard law inside the UNESCO recommendation, which I could encourage to repeat and repeat again. I mean, countries sign to this prohibition. So I think that's totally key. And secondly, I mean, inside these guidelines of United Nations, but also of the OECD, who was also initially leading this agenda, is to make sure that the data that AI is using is verified and is not biased. Yeah, we will avoid many problems if before launching an AI tool, developers just pose this question: is my data good enough?
Got it. So you're talking no labeling people, no categorizing people, and taking care of the data. It sounds very straightforward, but it's a huge challenge that will require private, public sector, educational institutions to get their heads together and make legislation happen. And when we're talking about legislation happening, we're talking about polarized political environments nowadays. I want to gauge your level of hope here. What keeps you up at night after talking with governments and the private sector and other stakeholders about AI?
But I think, what was the day today? No, it depends. It depends. I have Mondays Angels and Tuesday Angels. We need a coalition of the good. I've seen companies totally committed to fulfill an ethical and responsible AI agenda. And these are the guys who want to be associated with also good governments that really care, value citizens. I think at the end of the day, even for companies, ethical and responsible AI is good business, and some of them are understanding that. It's like as ESG. I know ESG starts to in the US starts to be again by some a bit questioned, but for me there is no question about it. No, we need environmentally sustainable, socially inclusive, and strong governance in companies, and we need an ethical and responsible AI development in companies. So what we need is a coalition of those of us who think AI is hyper powerful for good, but needs some guidelines, and work harder than the others. The other side who are just thinking in the short term, or they are thinking on this lack of regulation allows me to run this business, or this lack of regulation allows me to manipulate my citizens. At the end of the day, the good should prevail. What keeps me awake at night? My daughter, Alaya. I'm working this to make sure that her world is going to be as healthy as was mine, and that her opportunities are as big as were mine. And I think this coalition of civil society, academia, plus some good companies that are pushing for an ethical and responsible AI. And we are also seeing governments who are really pushing for good policies based on AI and want to contribute even in the international arena. The US getting back to UNESCO is one of the most evident ones that I see. So the reason of hope, of why I hope that this dystopian future is not materialized, is because we make sure that we work together and we join forces, and not just we cannot be just driven by AI. We have to drive AI where we want to go.
That's great. Protagonism. Thank you so much, Angel. This was really interesting to hear you, and we hope and we hope to have you back in Latin American Focus again. So I really appreciate you here.
This is a tectonic change, so I think we will feel it, and we'll feel it for good for a long time. So thank you a lot for the invitation again.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. I'm your host, Karin Zissis. This episode was produced by our executive producer, Luis Salemi. Check the podcast notes for more reading on AI in Latin America, and for a link to a previous episode with Ángel Melguizo about China's Belt and Road Initiative. The music in this podcast was performed at America Society. Find out about upcoming concerts at musicoftheamericas.org. And just a reminder that Latin American Focus is taking a North American summer break. Follow us wherever you listen so you know when we drop the next episode in September. Write us a review, give us 5 stars, or subscribe at Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you.